Tonight, right before you go to bed, you are going to stand in front of a bathroom mirror, squeeze a glob of mint-flavored paste onto a small plastic stick, and aggressively scrub your exposed skeleton. It feels like a purely modern, highly civilized chore, but scraping the biological grime off your teeth is one of the absolute oldest and most stubborn habits in human history. It is older than the invention of writing. It is older than the discovery of farming. It is significantly older than the concept of wearing clothes. The question is, how did our earliest ancestors figure out how to clean their teeth without rotting their jaws straight out of their skulls? To understand how bizarre our dental history really is, we have to rewind the clock way back before modern humans even existed. Back to roughly 1.8 million years ago, to an archaeological site in Dmanisi, in the modern-day country of Georgia. Researchers dug up the fossilized jawbones of some of our earliest hominin ancestors and found something weird. The teeth had deep, localized grooves worn into the sides of them. Fast forward to about 130,000 years ago in the Krapina cave in Croatia, and we see the exact same grooves in the teeth of Neanderthals. These weren't cavities, these were tool marks. Long before we invented the wheel, early humans were heavily relying on toothpicks. After tearing into tough, raw meat or fibrous roots, pieces of gristle and sinew would inevitably get jammed between their teeth. So, they improvised. They used stiff grass stalks, splintered fragments of animal bone, and sharpened twigs to dig the rot out of their mouths. But here is the crazy part. For the vast majority of human history, a toothpick was basically all you needed. If you went back in time 50,000 years and looked inside a hunter-gatherer's mouth, you would probably be shocked by how straight and remarkably cavity-free their teeth were. They didn't have dentists, they didn't have fluoride, but they had a diet that was incredibly tough to chew. Every meal of raw tubers and wild game required intense, heavy chewing, which acted as a natural mechanical abrasive, wiping plaque off the teeth before it could settle. More importantly, they ate almost zero refined carbohydrates. Their mouths were naturally self-cleaning machines. But here's what makes this so important. About 10,000 years ago, humans made a discovery that changed the trajectory of our species forever, and completely ruined our mouths in the process. We invented farming. The agricultural revolution took us from hunting wild game to settling down and growing crops. We started eating massive amounts of wheat, barley, maize, and rice. We started mashing grains into soft porridges and baking them into breads. From an evolutionary standpoint, this was a massive win for human survival. It meant we could feed thousands of people and build massive cities. But from a dental standpoint, it was a biological apocalypse. When you eat heavy carbohydrates, the enzymes in your saliva immediately start breaking them down into simple sugars. And there is a specific type of bacteria living in your mouth right now called Streptococcus mutans. It absolutely loves sugar. When it feeds on those sugars, it produces a highly acidic byproduct that literally dissolves the protective enamel on your teeth. Suddenly, for the first time in human history, our self-cleaning mouths were overwhelmed. Teeth started rotting at an alarming rate. And, in the ancient world, a cavity wasn't just a mild inconvenience that required a quick trip to a brightly lit clinic. It was a potential death sentence. Without antibiotics, a rotting tooth turns into a severe bacterial infection. That infection turns into an abscess. And because your upper teeth are located dangerously close to your brain and your major blood vessels, an untreated dental abscess can spread into your bloodstream, cause sepsis, and kill you in sheer agony. Ancient humans quickly realized that if they didn't figure out a way to manually remove this new agricultural slime from their teeth, they were going to die. So, dental hygiene escalated from a casual post-meal habit to an absolute war for survival. The first major technological leap happened around 3500 BC. If you looked inside the tombs of the ancient Babylonians or the ancient Egyptians, you would find perfectly preserved sticks buried alongside the dead. These were not just twigs. These were the world's first true toothbrushes, known as chew sticks. Ancient people would find specific plants, most notably the Salvadora persica tree, break off a twig and chew on one end of it until the wood fibers splintered and separated into a crude, bristly fan. Then, they would use that frayed end to vigorously scrub the absolute life out of their incisors. It was simple, it was brutal, and it completely worked. But this wasn't just about physical scrubbing. The ancient humans who chose these specific trees were unknowingly practicing advanced chemistry. The Salvadora persica tree, which is still used today in many parts of the world as a tool called the miswak, naturally contains highly active antibacterial compounds, fluoride, and silica. They were brushing their teeth with a stick that naturally produced its own cavity-fighting toothpaste. But as civilizations grew wealthier and diets grew softer and sweeter, the chew stick wasn't quite enough. People wanted something that felt cleaner. They wanted a specialized formula. Which brings us back to the ancient Egyptians, who hold the historical record for inventing the very first toothpaste. If you found an ancient Egyptian papyrus detailing their dental recipes, you would not find gentle ingredients like modern baking soda or mint extract. Ancient toothpaste was designed to be incredibly abrasive. They needed to scrape the hardened plaque off, and they did not care about saving the enamel. They crushed up rock salt. They dried out iris flowers. They added aggressive amounts of sharp black pepper. And when that wasn't enough, they escalated. They began burning ox hooves into ash, crushing up eggshells, and grinding raw pumice stone into a fine, gritty powder. They would mix this highly abrasive gravel with a little bit of water or saliva, rub it onto their gums with their fingers, and essentially sandblast their own mouths. But if you think brushing your teeth with burnt animal hooves and volcanic rock is rough, you have to look at what the Romans were doing. The ancient Romans were obsessed with dental hygiene, specifically with having bright, pearly white teeth as a major status symbol. But to achieve that perfect ancient smile, they relied on a chemical compound that is famous for its cleaning and bleaching properties: ammonia. And the easiest, most abundant source of natural ammonia in the ancient world was human urine. I wish I was making this up, but I am not. The ancient Romans actively used human urine as their daily mouthwash. They would swish it around in their mouths to burn away the bacteria and bleach their teeth white. But here is the truly fascinating part. The wealthy elite in Rome didn't just want any standard-issue local urine. They believed that the urine imported from the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal, was significantly stronger and more potent than the local supply. So, they actually paid merchants to bottle up Portuguese urine, ship it across the Mediterranean Sea, and deliver it to Rome so the rich could rinse their mouths with it. Because apparently, domestic Roman urine just didn't have that premium mouthfeel. Thankfully, the concept of brushing our teeth eventually moved away from the extreme chemical warfare of the Mediterranean and evolved into something much closer to what you have in your bathroom right now. To find the direct ancestor of the modern toothbrush, we have to fast forward to China, roughly around the 15th century during the Ming Dynasty. The Chinese realized that rubbing your teeth with a frayed twig or your bare finger was wildly inefficient. They needed something with actual, stiff bristles that could sweep between the teeth. So, they looked to nature for a solution and found the absolute stiffest, most durable hairs they could get their hands on: the coarse hair on the back of a Siberian pig's neck. They would shave the stiff bristles off the neck of a hog living in a freezing, harsh climate, because the cold made the hairs thicker and stronger. Then, they would drill tiny holes into a handle made out of animal bone or bamboo and meticulously tie the pig hairs into the slots. It was the first modern bristled toothbrush. When European travelers and merchants eventually made their way to China, they saw these bone and pig hair contraptions and brought them back to the West. The Europeans loved the design, but thought the pig hair was a bit too rough on their gums, so they swapped it out for softer horsehair. It wasn't until the 1930s, when a company called DuPont invented nylon, that we finally stopped brushing our teeth with animal fur and switched to the plastic bristles we use today. So, here's the full picture. Our ancient ancestors survived by picking gristle out of their teeth with bone splinters. The invention of farming flooded our mouths with cavity-causing sugar. The Babylonians fought back by chewing on antibacterial twigs. The Egyptians sandblasted their enamel with crushed ox hooves. The Romans bleached their smiles with imported urine. And the Chinese finally gave us the blueprint by strapping pig hair to a bamboo stick. Tonight, when you grab that brightly colored piece of plastic and squeeze that perfect blue gel onto the bristles, think about the millions of years of trial, error, and sheer desperation that led to that exact moment. You aren't just doing a boring evening chore. You are participating in a 2-million-year-old survival ritual, holding the final, perfected weapon in humanity's longest-running war against our own biology. Because at the end of the day, being human means outsmarting nature just enough to make sure our teeth outlive the rest of us. If you liked this trip through human history, feel free to stick around, and I'll see you in the next one.